Hello and welcome to Your Daily Detroit. It's Wednesday, November 17th, 2021. I'm Jer Stays, and across the table from me is...
Fletcher Sharpe.
Good to see you, man.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, we have got a lot to cover, and if you hear any shaking in the background, that's studio dog Gabby.
Yeah, it's my best friend. That's how it has to be.
All right, first up, and this ties into sports as we'll get into, COVID numbers are on the significant rise. Now, I know a lot of people don't care at this point, especially our very vaccinated audience, but if you are unvaccinated, worry about hospital capacity or virtual school for your kids. There is a lot going on, and I feel like we need to take a couple minutes to update. First off, Michigan is the hottest spot in the country for COVID-19 cases. Metro Detroit's COVID cases per 100,000 are spiking. According to COVID Act Now, we're north of 61 new cases per 100K per day. That is fourth wave territory for sure. Our test positivity rate is above 12%, and all of that puts us knocking on the door of not just critical, but labeled as extreme levels. Major area hospital systems are filling up. In a number of press briefings, officials do not believe these numbers are going to stop for the next 3 to 4 months. Not only are patients increasing, with the vast majority being unvaccinated, but healthcare workers are in shorter supply because of burnout. The Detroit Public Schools are debating between virus concerns and staff shortages whether to go virtual on Fridays going forward. Other districts have had to take virtual days and more due to COVID and staff shortages. What's driving the numbers? Michigan's real vaccination rate lags behind the rest of the nation, with just 54% of the state's total population getting the shot. Nationally, that number is north of 68%. With that much virus in the community, breakthrough infections will increase because of the increased exposure. Coming up ahead will be a number of debates, as there's a good chance hospital systems will overflow on this fourth surge. How much of life will have to adjust because of limited healthcare capacity? Or, well, if we're just going to ride this one out.
Personally, I had a hospital issue earlier in the year. I had an asthma attack and I had to go to the hospital. Not awesome. And I've been to the hospital before for asthma attacks, and typically they keep you with people who are like kind of in the same realm of, what's sick. But because the hospital is kind of overflowing due to COVID, I had to share a room with someone who had pneumonia. And for those who don't know, if you have asthma and you get pneumonia, like, it makes you very, very prone to potentially dying, especially when there's an airborne virus going around. So if we could try to do our best we can to raise those numbers so we can keep people...
raise those vaccination numbers.
We want to keep people in the hospital who need to be around the certain people that they're with. We don't want to mix match people who have different ailments because the parts of the hospital that they would normally be in are full because people just did not take care of this pandemic the way they were supposed to. So let's try to do better as a unit, as a big collective, as a state, so that we can get back to having regular hospital occupancy and not extreme, terrible hospital occupancy.
So some people are saying from the healthcare perspective, like, should we slow things down? Should we shut things down? But I think that if we stuck to masks and being a little bit smarter like that, we could make a lot of progress.
Cat's out of the bag. You can't shut stuff down now. If you shut stuff down now, they might actually riot. Like, I know people complained about, I'm going to do this, I'm going to show my freedoms. They might actually, if you give give it to them and then take it back, they might actually freak out in like a way that we cannot predict. So we're kind of stuck at this point. But yes, masks, still using 6 feet. I was going to buy a headband that said, if you can read this, you're within 6 feet. Still giving people personal space. You go to the gas station, you go to UPS, Kinko's, FedEx, whatever, and people are still not wearing masks, but like within 6 feet of each. And I'm like, I'm all for people being vaccinated, but still 6 feet is still a good measure unless you know that person and like you guys are personable.
I mean, those are all good points. I think that we're in this for a while, and this ties into sports because Detroit Red Wing Dylan Larkin was pulled mid-game against Dallas for a positive COVID test. He had just gotten back off some time for personal issues. Plus, the National Football League is increasing their protocols around testing ahead of the holidays for players and staff. Fletcher, is this something where we're going to be seeing impacts with sports again?
Potentially. I know everyone wanted to point the finger to Tyler Bertuzzi because he's the last unvaccinated person in the NHL, and he's also Dylan Larkin's teammate. I'm not really sure what happened with Dylan. We don't want to speculate because speculation only leads to incorrect assumptions. But it's gonna start to cause. It's already causing issues now. The Ottawa Senators recently had 10 players and coaches confirmed to be in the COVID-19 protocol, and that's going to limit how they can play. Heck, DCFC, not to jump ahead, their last game was canceled because their opponent, LA Force, had a few COVID breakthroughs, so they just were unable to play.
That's exactly where I was going to go, because that is something that came out as a draw, which, by the way, I'm just going to say, I mean, we're leaving NISA, so whatever. But the idea that we were together and they weren't, and it becomes a draw, so both teams get a point, feels a little weird to me.
Yeah, I think it might start to rear back its head a little bit. I mean, even so, with the Packers last week when they played against the Chiefs, their quarterback Aaron Rodgers was taken out for the week due to COVID protocol, breaking COVID protocol, because he said earlier that he was immunized. Did not, when they asked him if he was vaccinated, did not say yes. He said, I'm immunized. And it came out that he actually did not take the vaccine and actually tested positive. If we just all, like you said, started acting a little bit smarter, moving a little bit smarter, a little bit, more considerately, we'd be fine.
Let's talk about the Lions really quick. There was a unique thing that happened over the weekend, 16-16 tie with the Steelers. One thing from the reaction, I think a lot of people didn't realize that games in the NFL can be ties.
I think about 10 years or so ago, the Eagles tied against somebody, and quarterback Donovan McNabb was like, I didn't know the game could end in a tie. And I was like, you know what? I kind of didn't know that either. So whatever, I get it. But we're now, that was the first tie in a very long time. Since then, off the top of my head, I can think of at least 4 or 5 ties in the NFL. So if you're a player and you're like, I didn't know it could end in a tie, you're just being ignorant. This is your job. You should know.
Wasn't there a Steeler that did that?
Yes. Running back Najee Harris is like, I was expecting to go back on the field, and then they're like, no, the game's over. He's like, what about, overtime? He's like, yeah, overtime's over. The game is over now. It's goofy to me. I understand, not knowing if it's a new thing that happens. If you make a catch,
or if you're new to the sport or something like that.
If you make a catch off your helmet and it bounces off your helmet off the referee's face and spins off a pigeon and lands in your hand, you're like, is that a catch? Is that a catch? I don't know. It's never happened before. Okay. But ties have happened before while you've been alive. It's one thing if it happened and you had not been born yet, but you were alive playing football, watching football. Not an excuse. That's not an excuse anymore. I understand some people are like, well, rookie players come from college, and in college football, there's no ties. You just go to overtime back and forth till someone wins. But you're a professional now. They're paying you money. Pay attention. I don't have much sympathy for you in that regard. You should understand that rules change. Adapt, man. Come on.
Speaking of adapting, the Lions may have to adapt to life without Jared Goff, which, I mean, let's be honest, you're not going to get your 0-17, but winless for 17 games is still possible.
Adapting to not having Goff this season is like taking out one mannequin and putting in another. It's not, whoever they put in there is not going to magically lead them.
Because to be clear, as we're recording this, he's not practicing with the team.
No, he had an oblique injury that he suffered during the Steelers game, which frankly, had I known, I would have been definitely pull him. As a former high school quarterback of mediocre talent, I can say this much. An oblique injury in your core is going to limit how hard you can throw the ball. So if you can't throw the ball hard as a quarterback, you probably should not be in there throwing the ball at all. As of right now, he is day-to-day. There was a press conference as we were recording, and listening to parts of it, he just sounded like he did not think he'd be playing this week, which, might be good for him, might be good for the Lions, definitely good for whoever has their opponent's defense in fantasy football, because yikes. I was wrong. They won't go 0-17. I'll admit that I was wrong, but they're not going to win a game, so it doesn't really matter anyways. They're still going to have the number 1 overall pick. They're going to draft someone who they think is going to change the franchise, and as long as the people in power are still in power, it won't.
Well, let's get to Detroit City FC real quick. First off, there is the final game of the year. It does not matter for the standings, but I feel like we have to do the thing. We have to go all the way through and finish the season and do that final preview in Nisa, the last Nisa game for Le Rouge.
A few people on Twitter, mainly Dion of Northern Guard, made this point. The first big modern game for DCFC, after their first season, was at Hurley High School in Berkeley against FC Sparta, Michigan, which was the first iteration of Michigan Stars back when they were owned by the Calluses from Ontario. And then the Calluses sold them to the Dearborn Sports Group, who then made them the Michigan Stars, and then that's when George entered the picture. And they thought it was a bit ironic and a little bit of poetry that their first game that they had in the modern era was against FC Sparta Michigan. Their last game in this era will be against Michigan Stars, because as of now, the Stars are still going to be in NISA, not moving up, so they won't be playing anymore. Unless they play in the U.S. Open Cup, there will be no more games against the Stars, which I think a lot of people will be breathing sighs. I know I will be breathing sighs of relief, because I honestly do not enjoy having to talk about them longer than I need to.
Do you predict a DCFC win?
Yes, mainly because I think the Stars will be a little bit deflated. I think DCFC will be a little bit kind of coasting towards like the end of the season, but I think their talent-wise, they'll still be fine. Outside, we said many times, outside of Tatenda Makruva, the keeper for the Stars, and Devin Amu-Mensah, their defender, like they don't really have much. I honestly be a bit more worried for Detroit City's players just to make it out of the game in one piece. I expect to see some heavy roster turnover this game, just because it matters, because people want to go out and win. People don't want to go out and lose. Like, if you're being paid to play, you want to go out there and play for the team on your front as opposed to the name on the back. So they're going to go out there and try. But I think you'll see some names that typically haven't started a game, probably start a game, or maybe get a little bit earlier just to get some PT to run out. I expect a 2-0 victory for Detroit City FC.
Now we're going to play a little cleanup from last week's episode. We got some questions after the episode from listeners about the team. Eric, what are the downsides of this move, specifically for the fans and the club? We both were pretty positive on it. Eric was like, hey, there's got to be downsides. What are we looking at with that?
I mean, my biggest fear for the club was them losing their intellectual property, moving up. I was worried that it would change kind of the structure of the club a little bit. And that fear was immediately pushed aside, because they will be retaining their intellectual property, so that's good. Which means they can still be kind of the disruptor a little bit less, because they're in a much more structured league, but still be the disruptor. I will say, I guess if there is a downside, ticket prices will eventually go up a little bit, because they are going to have to fund the stadium being fixed. They're going to have to fund potentially.
I mean, there's a new minimum for player salaries too, right?
They have to fund paying some of these players. Some of your fan favorite players probably will not be making the jump forward. I can speak for sure. I'm sure Cyrus will probably be fine. I'm sure a few others will be fine. But like a few you've grown attached to over the years, kind of like when I said when they were going to jump from MPSL to NISA, they can have their banner hung up in the field house. They can have their banner hung up at Keyworth. They can have their little game where everyone comes to watch them play and you all clap for them. Their testimonial game where the fans and stuff play with them as well. But if you're serious about jumping up to the second division in this league, in this country, these players cannot be on your roster. They cannot be on your roster. If you're serious about actually competing, if you're just there to have fun, keep the same roster you had from NISA. That's totally fine. But if you're actually serious about, we want to win titles, we want to keep doing what we need to do, you're going to see a lot more new faces. And if you're okay with that, awesome. If you're not okay with that, make your peace this game now, because it's going to be very different people.
Before I let you go, we were having this chat offline, and listeners of Daily Detroit love to try food. And this one, my ears perked up, my friend, because I've driven by it and I've thought about going, but I haven't. And apparently I'm a jerk for doing that, because Krispy Krunchy Chicken is actually good.
Yeah, so I'll be really brief because I know the story can get way long. I went to go visit a friend up in Flint, and after I left, I went to a gas station. And as I was about to walk in, there was a lady of the evening who was like, "Can I have $5?" And I was like, "No." Like, why? And she's like, "I'm just trying to get some chicken." And I was like, "Yeah, okay." So I went inside, got gas, got a Gatorade. I'm like, let me get some chicken tenders and a few legs. Was in line eating tenders and took a bite and legitimately was like, went outside and gave this lady $5. I'm like, here you go. You were right. I was wrong. $5. She went inside, bought some chicken. I'm like, yep, this is great. I enjoy this entire moment. Is awesome for me. Downside is it's in Flint, so I have to drive back with this chicken. So I brought it back to my partner. Nicole had some and she's like, this is pretty good. And I'm like, yeah, it sucks. I have to go up to Flint. And she's like, you don't. And I'm like, I do. You don't know a thing about it. It's Krispy Krunchy Chicken. She's like, there's literally like one down here. Lo and behold, the BP and Mac, almost all their units are like inside of either a gas station or like a grocery store.
Hey, one of the great things about food in Metro Detroit is food in a gas station. Like, there is an amazing gas station. I think it's Hilton and 696. It has amazing Middle Eastern food. And then there's the Tasty in Dearborn with the burgers.
But it's either really great or really terrible. The way my stomach operates, I don't need to find out the really terrible because I'll be out of commission for a few days. But Krispy Krunchy Chicken, very much on the scale. It's Cajun seasoned. It's awesome. It's great. They have fries. They have honey biscuits. They have almost any part of the chicken you want. They have Kool-Aid. They have desserts. It's very good. They close at 9 typically, but I would say maybe get there around 7:30 or 8 because if they run out of food, they just run out and they just close. So yeah, Krispy Krunchy Chicken. Yes, if I had like a little like diary in front of me with like check marks and such, big old green check mark.
All right, I pulled up the website. What do I need to order? There's everything from like breakfast to lunch to seafood. Like, what do I get? And also the other question I have, and this is real talk, have you had their mac?
I only eat my grandmother's mac and cheese. If
Fair.
It's not anything else. But Nicole had some and she liked it. She wasn't like perfect, but she liked it. I have eaten there. I've gotten the chicken tenders. I've gotten one of the family packs with like all the different types of chicken. I've gotten legs, thighs, drumsticks, wings. I've had fries. I've had mashed potatoes. Had the Kool-Aid. Had a red velvet cake piece. Had biscuits. I recommend all of what I just said. And there's probably more. Like I'm not a seafood. I can't eat seafood because allergic. But like I'm sure it's probably just as good as their food. I recommend it on my growing food person thing for the show. Yes. Krispy Krunchy Chicken, do it.
All right, we are done for today. A quick reminder that our podcast is supported in large part by our members. You can join them at patreon.com/Daily Detroit, and thank you very much. As well as we're doing underwriting opportunities. We've already had a couple of takers that are going to be coming on in the next couple of weeks, so excited about that. And if you want to do that, just get in touch with me, jared@dailydetroit.com, as well as if you want to yell at me about anything else that we've said.
And if you really want to get your logo out there, you can talk to Jer, and if we work out something, I will gladly wear a logo on a sleeve, on a hoodie, on a headband. I don't care. Just talk to Jer about it, please.
Well, with that, I'm Jer Stays.
And I'm Fletcher Sharpe.
Thank you so much for listening to Your Daily Detroit. Take care of each other, and we'll see you around town.